Hey everyone, my name is Anna Stowe with Great Design for You. Today we're going to talk a little bit about home office. We're going to talk about the space that we maybe haven't really thought about before. My name is Anna Stowe with Great Design for You here in beautiful Lake Norman, North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself, and we're going to jump in and talk about that beautiful, or hopefully what you want to be, your beautiful functional home office. So our mission at Great Design for You is to bring beauty, inspiration, positive energy into your home so that you can live an abundant, beautiful life. And we want to do the same thing in your home office. We're going to carry that theme right across. So our objective and goals for today are to find out our needs, define a workspace. We're going to share a few solutions for a lack of home office space. We're going to get you thinking. We're going to help you and your family work together cohesively in your home office spaces. If you have any questions, comments, or you just want to brainstorm a little bit with us, feel free to put your comments in the comment box below, and also make sure you like us, follow us. And if you visit our website, you're going to go to contact us, and you can go to option 1, and you can set up your very own 30-minute call with us where we can really answer some of your specific questions. Okay, so who am I? I'm this crazy girl from Danville, Virginia. So if you're from Danville, say hey. Make sure that you put your comment that you're from Danville in the box below. And I'm also a High Point University graduate. So if you graduated from High Point, I want to hear from you guys too. I've been an interior designer for a little over 20 years now. I started Great Design for You as Anna Stowe Interiors back in 2008. So it's been going for a little bit of time now. So we basically work with residential and soft commercial. I have a lot of clients that have office spaces, small boutique style restaurants and hotels, and I'll also help with that space as well. We specialize in window treatments and color consultations and floor planning, all the way to renovations and new home construction. So what is an actual home office space? So Webster says that it's a room in a person's home where he or she does work. So I like that. It's nice and simple. No need to overcomplicate things. So today's situation is a little bit different, and it keeps getting different every day, but we're going to have more and more of us working from home, whether or not you want to, or it's now a necessity that you have to. Two or more, 2, 3, 4, it's a lot of people. It could be a whole family's worth that is actually using the same space. So not necessarily ideal. What's going on in that space? Well, of course, we've got conference calls going on. We have phone calls. We have webinars. We have video calls. Children might be homeschooled in this space. You may have multiple children in the same space. Never a good thing. We have lots of distractions for adults and distractions for children. So we need to kind of work through that. And sometimes we just have lack of motivation. We're at home, we're thinking about other things that are going on. It doesn't really look like workplace. So we need to take care of those also. We need to really get very functional in this functional office space. So how did we get here? Well, a lack of good office space at home. We didn't plan for it. Sometimes we didn't think it was necessary. It wasn't a priority. It was like, the kids go to school. The husband works away from home. Maybe the wife works away from home also. It just wasn't really necessary, so it's not a priority. Maybe it was kind of a priority. It was on the home office to-do list. We were thinking about it. We could see the benefit. We would like to offer our child a really nice workspace. We really feel like it would be nice for us to have a functional office space, but we just haven't got around to it. So now it's discovery time. We're going to talk about the where, what, who, why. We're going to really dig a little deep and find out what it is and what we can do for you. So, available options. Well, let's think about our situation first. We don't want to dive in your home and figure out, oh, there's a little corner, there's something. We want to figure out our situation. So everyone's situation is unique and different. Everybody needs something differently. So you might need a ton of space to lay out paperwork. You may use just a computer. You may really feel more comfortable with some natural light. We need to find out all of these things about you. Everybody's work habits are different and everyone has different priorities. So let's think about that. Let's think about, and it's nice to actually write a little list, make some notes and write a list of, and answer some of these questions. So I want you to think about who lives in your home. How many family members do you have? Is it just you? Seems easy enough, but maybe it's you and a spouse, or maybe it's you, a spouse, and one child, or 3 children, or 4 children. Maybe it's an adult child that lives there. Maybe you've got an adult parent that lives with you. We need to think about this. We also need to think about, do they already have, or is there one established home office already? What hours do you work? Everybody has different schedules. So if everybody's on the same schedule of maybe 9 to 5, we're going to have to figure out how we can do that. What does a typical workday look like? Are you typically on a lot of calls? Or is this mostly just work from your computer? Could you easily pop in a headset and sit there in front of your computer and do your work? And is that the way that you like to work? What tools do you need? Some people need a lot of tools. They're constantly sending out emails and having to print things and having 3 or 4 monitors going on at the same time, where other people may be content with a small laptop and maybe a notebook for a couple of notes that may come up. If you have children, I want you to list out all of your children, and I want you to think about their age, what grade they're in. Again, what type of workload do they have? What tools do they need? A kindergartner is going to need different tools than an 11th or 12th grader. Do they already have their own personal desk? I mean, yeah, there's lots of children that have a little desk in their room and it's really pretty. And then there's lots of children that don't. And when they do work, it's usually at the kitchen table. So let's figure out better ways. So we also want to answer some other questions. What type of space do you have? Okay, let's do a little inventory now of your house, your home. Do you have a room designated as a home office? Some people do, some people don't. Is it already set up as a working office? Many of the times we do have a home office, but it ends up becoming a toy chest, or it ends up being just a catch-all for everything because it wasn't on the priority list, or it was on the list, but it was kind of down at the bottom. So do we have that space? Is it set up for one person, or is it set up for multiple? Do you have children that share a bedroom? That may be a problem if you have two children trying to work in that space together. It may not be. We need to think about how your family works. And again, if you have an 11th grader sharing a room with a first grader and they're doing completely opposite like tasks throughout the day, it might be a little distracting for one or the other of them. Do they have desks in their rooms if they are sharing or if they're by themselves? Either way, list all the rooms in your home: living room, family room, keeping room. I want you to list out all of the spaces, whether or not you think it's important or not. If you have an attic, I want you to list that out. I want you to list out the little niche at the top of the staircase that doesn't have anything, or you don't even think about it being a potential place to actually work. I want you to list it because you might be surprised at the areas that could function as a small workspace. Tip: no matter the space, make sure you have a comfortable seating. Comfortable seating is key. If you are completely always fidgeting because the seat just doesn't feel good, you're never going to be completely actually able to relax to do work. It's going to be very distracting. So you need to have some type of desk or work surface. And we can get kind of creative when we'll talk about that, about work surfaces as well. You need lighting. You cannot work in the dark. You will fall asleep. Like, there are very few people that will not fall asleep if they are trying to work and they don't have something to keep them interactive and they're in the dark. Plus, you need to be able to see what you're reading. You need adequate space. And I'm saying adequate space does not mean that you need a huge space. Adequate space may be a 3 or 4 foot little cube. That may be adequate. It may not be. Let's think about that. It needs to function. So everybody's function, everybody's ways that they work, remember when we were talking about that, is going to be a little different. So again, you need to function. We just don't know how. We need to go back to that questionnaire that you were, all those notes that you took earlier. And the atmosphere. It needs to have some type of atmosphere. What I mean by that is you need to have something that speaks to you, makes it your happy place. It's not going to be, it's work. It's not necessarily a vacation, but if you can feel comfortable and relaxed in the space, it's going to be a lot better for you in the long run, especially when you're working from home, when you already have distractions. So a chair, let's talk about that chair. So a padded dining room chair might work, but test out the chair for that personal comfort. Everyone feels different in different chairs. I've had lots of clients that feel perfectly fine in a simple chair, has no padding, might have a good, nice back to it. It's fine, and that's great. But think about how long you're going to probably be sitting in that chair. The chair should be an investment. I probably would steer clear of just a wooden dining room chair. You may need something that adjusts. There's some people that feel really comfortable. I love having the stand-up computers and they don't want a chair at all. But you're probably going to need a resting place at some point. You shouldn't expect yourself to stand up for 8 hours straight. So it's nice to at least have that option and have a good, comfortable seat for when you do want to sit down. Make sure that the chair isn't too large or too small for a child or for you as an adult as well. But so oftentimes we have small children sitting in big chairs and their legs are underneath them and they are fidgeting the whole time because they just can't get comfortable. So if the chair is a little bit too large, or if it's just too small and they're also fidgeting because they can't sit on it properly, that's going to be a problem. Make sure that if you need to move around in the room, it's easy to do. So if you have something, a nice caster chair that you can turn to a desk behind you and you can turn back to in front of you, then that's really a nice added benefit. And don't be afraid to invest in a good chair. So oftentimes people will put a beautiful desk in and they'll invest in all this wonderful equipment and they'll try to get the most inexpensive chair they can possibly find because it was cheap and it was easy to get. I would probably recommend spending more on the chair than the desk a lot of times, because the desk, depending on your situation, may just be housing a laptop. If you're housing a lot of stuff and you need something very sturdy, that's a different story. But make sure that your chair does function very well for you. You're going to spend a lot of time in it. So here's some desk options. There are lots of desk options out there. We've already talked a little bit about the stand-up desk. You may have just a sofa table, something that's only 20 inches, maybe 18 inches deep, big enough for a laptop, maybe a notebook beside you. It might be perfect. You may not need anything else. You may need an actual large executive style desk that has storage for files and such. That's okay. You need to evaluate what you're going to need, your needs are. And then there are some really cute desks that we really don't think about, but they're really nice for some of those small spaces that we're going to talk about later. This little wall desk here, you can pull that little working surface up and lock it away and nobody sees all of your stuff either. So it's really nice. This is perfect for quite a few different spaces. So we're going to get into those spaces in a little bit. So lighting, again, very important. I always like to suggest having a nice bright white light so that you can see without straining your eyes. Natural light is really good. So if you can get next to a window, if you can have some natural light flowing in, wonderful, but it's not always guaranteed. So if I were sitting here and I have this nice window beside me and it was a really rainy day and that was the only source of light, it wouldn't be very functional. My eyes, I would be squinting a lot and it just wouldn't be comfortable. And sometimes we don't even realize that we're doing some of these habits until we start getting a headache or something. They're like, oh yeah, I forgot to turn the lights on, and I've been looking at a computer screen all day, or I've been doing, this, and we start trying to justify why that happened. It probably happened because we just weren't like ready for the situation. We didn't have the proper lighting, or we didn't have the proper chair, so that's why our backs were hurting, or whatever the case may be. So then, adequate and functional space. So again, here is some examples of some work surfaces. This is one of our desks here. We need to make sure, no matter what the surface is, that it's nice and clean. You don't need a lot of clutter. I know that oftentimes we want to put a couple of pictures on our desk, and we want to put maybe a little tchotchke on there, and then we want all these little things around, and it's great, and we'll talk about personality and bringing that into your home office. But you want that surface to be nice and clean. You don't want to have 50 books that aren't being used, because that's just going to be clutter, and it's going to just clutter up your mind, clutter up your space, and make it a little less functional for you. We want to have the right tools for each person. So everybody has different tools. So if you know that you need pencils Make sure that you have a compartment somewhere, either a drawer or a little compartment that has plenty of pencils for you, or pens. Personally, I use a lot of drafting pens when I'm drawing out floor plans, or I'm doing a rendering by hand, because I like to go old school sometimes. And so I'd like to make sure I have those drafting pens. And if I'm doing a rendering, I might need some color pencils, and you'll probably see some of that floating in behind me. Make sure that I have maybe stapler on hand if you need a stapler, or highlighters. That's big. So just make sure that you have the right tools. And then that could include making sure that you have a printer. That might include making sure that you have the Wi-Fi connection that's closer by than maybe someone else that doesn't use that, so that you have really good Wi-Fi, or you have a booster somewhere so that you do have very reliable sources there. The right amount of space. So again, we're going to go back to the right amount of space. I don't want to tell you, I would never say you need to make sure that you have a minimum of X amount of square foot of space, because everybody's amount of space is going to be different. But make sure that you really are honest with yourself and you give yourself enough space. So the atmosphere, and this is where it is important to have some of those pictures, those inspiration. Don't forget to add a little personality into your space. If you are like I am, I like blue, and that makes me happy. So I have blues in my office, and I have space that talks to that. I may have a nice pretty picture of a beach somewhere, so I'm like, oh yeah, that's really nice. That gives me inspiration, so that's wonderful. You may want to make sure that you have a picture of your dogs, or you may want to have a picture of your family. That's fine. I would probably steer clear of papering the entire area and having too many distractions. But it's okay. It's good to have a healthy amount of you in your workspace. So some additional tips to consider. Here we have a nice space that's been put together by Impeccable Closets, our friends. They do great work. We want to make sure the sound and the acoustics are good. And I purposely came into this space today because I want you to hopefully you can't hear it too bad, but I'm hoping that you can hear that little dog in the background. We want to stay away from that. We want to try our best to stay away from the distractions. But life happens, so sometimes we have distractions, but we want to try to minimize those distractions. We want to try to minimize the noise in the background and all of that, because everybody has that neighbor that as soon as you get on a call, they decide they're going to maybe go out and cut the grass or let their dogs loose in the backyard. That happens. So this is another picture here of a very clean workspace. And these are some of the distractions that we're going to have that we want to kind of minimize as much as possible. We want to minimize like the children talking in the background and people screaming at each other, and maybe your spouse or your child is arguing with somebody, or maybe you're arguing with somebody and you're the distraction for somebody else working, as we have here. There's always going to be construction going on outside, or lawn, or here's some other. It's like we need to try to minimize these distractions if at all possible, no matter which space we're going to be in. Here's another little dog popping up. There's always something. Sometimes it might be a cricket that gets in the room that we really can't get away from, but we want to minimize. A really nice clean space here. We want to think about maybe a nice window treatment. Window treatments are something that a lot of people don't think of as being really functional, but we can do a really nice functional window treatment that will help to close off some of those distractions outside. So this workspace is wonderful. It has this nice large window, but imagine if your neighbor was cutting their grass and this was on the side view and you could see your neighbor the whole time, and you're trying to give a presentation, or you are trying to pay attention, and you see that the Amazon truck is walking or driving by the road. That would be very distracting. So if you have some window treatments that you can close off those distractions, that was wonderful. A nice rug, that's going to help dampen the sound. So if you do have a lot of noise outside, that's going to help to dampen that sound. Fabric. A lot of times an office is just like this office, beautiful, nice, functional, but lots of wood. And oftentimes we have hardwood floors on top of that. So that's where the rug is very important. So we want to think about our background also. So this is more and more important with the more and more use of Zoom and webinars. We want to make sure we have a nice clean background. So let's talk about this for a little bit. Here's a couple of background examples. So we have a nice clean background here, and then we have the wah-wah background. So how many times have you been on a Zoom call here lately or a webinar and you've noticed something not so pretty in someone's backdrop? Maybe a pile of clothes that could have been easily taken care of. No, I mean, they may have a beautiful office, they may have a very functional space, but there's something distracting in the background. We want to kind of stay away from that. I always recommend not putting a mirror right behind you, because if you have a mirror behind you and you have a television on the other side, like this guy here, you can see that this guy or girl, they like baseball. So they're watching a game while their boss is giving a webinar, and everybody knows it because there's a mirror and it's giving away all your little secrets. So don't want to do that. We want to make sure that if you have something a little personal, it's put away also. You want to come across to your boss, your colleagues, your clients as those folks that have it together and are very good at what they do, and they're not that disorganized person. You don't want to come across as the guy here, we're going to not show his face, but the guy here with the pile of work that he can't even get to, and the coffee mug that probably has spilled over onto some of the work. We don't want to be that person. Even if the rest of our room is a mess, we want our backdrop to look really nice and pulled together. So we want to have a well-organized space. That's basically what it is. I mean, if you have a nice, well-organized space, it's probably going to look professional and you're going to get a lot of work done. So let's talk a little bit about children's space. So sometimes children's spaces are going to be a little bit different than an adult space. Why is it important for a designated student working space? Well, it keeps them in their space without distractions. If they're in the kitchen and every time someone comes to the front door, they hear the doorbell, or every time someone needs to take a break and they go down to get some water, they're, wanting to get a glass of water also, or they see the cookie dish, they want a cookie. That's not necessarily the best thing. They also need to have that regular schedule of, I'm going to a place to work, I'm going somewhere. It's very hard for adults to stay positive if they don't have a place to go to. It's even harder for a child because their little brains just can't function as or they shouldn't have to function as much as an adult. So this gives them a little bit more of a sense of normality and going somewhere, going to a place of work without, and then also they're out of your way so that you're not distracting them, but they're not distracting you either. So some tips to take in consideration when you're doing a child's working space. It should be free of distractions. I would probably, if we can keep that child out of their bedroom, that would be the best. I would not recommend, if we can get away with it, having a bunch of toys around, because they're going to want to pick up the toys and play with it. I probably wouldn't have a television around. And sometimes we can't do without having that television. So sometimes I might have like a little drop cloth or a piece of artwork that I prop up in front of the television, so they kind of forget that there's a television there. Because if there's just a black screen sitting in across the room from them, they're going to be tempted to turn it on. Very few children can resist the urges. Very few adults can resist the urges also. So again, if you're an adult and you have a television around and you feel like you are being a little distracted by it, it's not a bad thing to have a nice piece of artwork. You could get a nice pretty canvas that you set behind the television, and you just put it in front of the television when you're not using it. Just prop it there. It looks pretty. Doesn't have to cost a fortune. It can be something that just looks like it's a piece of artwork that's been there the whole time. And sometimes you can get them that if it has a deep enough canvas to it, you can have it where you can just kind of prop it on top of the television and get a large enough one. You don't even see that you have a television, no matter if that television is sitting on a piece of furniture or that television's hanging on the wall. You now have a piece of artwork hanging on that wall. So school children are the same thing. They all have different needs. So you may want to have class bins. I love this little bookshelf here with the bins to it. This could be in the room or in an adjacent room to their workspace, but somewhere that they can go. If you have multiple children, it's great to have it somewhere close by that they can go to and get their tools out of and bring it to their space. Again, you need good lighting, enough task space. I mean, if you have a child, maybe a second, third grader, and they're doing a lot of school projects, maybe I know like kindergarten and first grade, a lot of times they're cutting out stuff. They need to have a little bit more space to do that, because if they only have just a tiny little 2 or 3, 4 inches by 10 or 15 inches, the little space in front of their computer to try to work on, and they're little, so they might not be able to go to the back of the desk. They're going to use their lap. So if you give them a little space that they can get to, they can access very easily, that's good. But again, you need to find out what their tasks are from day to day and make sure that they have the right amount of space. Again, this is very important. It needs to be very clean. I mean, even if the rest of the room is not pulled together, because we live in our homes, and I get that. You're going to have stuff. I have stuff. I mean, you're not going to see my office right now because I have lots of stuff in here. But my work space, I try to keep it as clean as possible. I didn't clean up completely because I wanted you to see that there was a few things in the background. That's life. But you do need to make sure that it's pretty clean for you, so that you can work nicely, your child can work nicely. Again, that comfortable seating, very important. We've already talked about having the right size chair. Schedule breaks. Make sure that they have scheduled breaks, just like we schedule breaks. Oftentimes, I know that the school systems will schedule those breaks, but make sure that they can leave that space and have a break and then come back and it's fresh new space again. An adult office. Some things are going to be similar, some things are going to be a little different. Why is it important for an adult to have a working home office? Well, it provides that same thing. They have a place to go. Way before the pandemic, I had lots of clients that were working from home, and we were doing home offices for this very reason. We were putting doors on the home office so they could go to work and feel like they could actually leave work behind those doors. Very important. This contains all of their work papers and their documents, and it protects it, because if you're working in a sensitive industry, you don't need your guest or your children to pick up something that might not necessarily be meant for their eyes, or losing paperwork that really is important and you don't want to lose. You want to separate. That's work. This is life. And it's harder to do when you're not leaving that building and when your home and your work are under the same roof. It's harder. So we need to make sure that we have that space. It might be very important for tax purposes. If you have a designated space and it's not meant for anything else, then it might be a write-off. So that's a benefit to you also. If you're putting your own home office in your living room, you might not be able to get away with that. So with some adult tips to take in consideration. Again, free from distractions. If you have a room without a door, you may want to think about adding a door, and that's just a little bit of construction. Sometimes we can do that easier than other times, but you may want to consider that investment. This is an investment, after all, in your work. So think about that. If you have a door, but it has glass, you may want to add a shade so that you close it off. And so then you can hide that world from your personal world. And again, good lighting. We're going to talk about that a lot. Enough workspace, clean and comfortable. Consider the background. We've already talked about that a little bit. And then also consider the background noise when you're doing those video calls and such. And schedule your self breaks. I know this was always hard for me. I've actually gone through and put breaks into my schedule so that I know I've got to get up and walk around, even if I'm in the middle of doing something, so that when I come back, I'm a little bit more fresh. Disclaimer. These solutions that we're going to talk about, they're not for everyone. Everyone's house is different, but we're going to talk a little bit about some possible places. You need to get to know yourself, your needs, the needs of your children, the needs of your spouse. You need to get to know your family. We've already done those questions in the front. Look at those questions, know those questions. So here's some available options that people really just don't even think about. If you have a large walk-in closet, which oftentimes people have large walk-in closets that aren't being utilized. So often they're big, huge spaces, and we're using like a quarter of it. That could very well be a place to have as an office. So a few tips: clean out the clothes, move them away, maybe have a work corner of your office. A comfortable chair. Again, don't make it too big or too small for your space. A sturdy table. It depends on how much space that you need, if this is going to work out for you, but make sure that the table it is a sturdy table. It's not going to tip over on you. I probably wouldn't do a card table in this space, just because if you do go in to get clothing later, you could possibly knock into it. I would probably recommend facing the door and not facing a corner, because that's going to give you a sense that it's a little bit more of an open space. And then if you do need to go and open up the door to let in the outside world, you can do that. Sometimes we have windows in our office, or in our not office, I'm sorry, in our closets, which is really great. If you have that, that's perfect. That gives you a little extra light, also natural light, but then make sure that you do have that nice task lighting too. And then the benefits for this is it's quiet, it's away from distractions. I have a friend of mine that did just this. Her husband was having problems not being able to get work done. They had a walk-in closet within a walk-in closet, and that space was just never used. They had boxes of stuff that honestly they needed to bring to Goodwill and donate them. So they did, they cleaned it out. He put his office space in there. He was in an industry that he didn't need a ton of space, but it was pretty much soundproof. And he didn't have to worry about anybody. And the good news about that is their Wi-Fi was actually in that space also. So he had the best Wi-Fi spot in the house as well. So it could be pretty amazing. So here's a few examples of what could work really well. So another option, your sunroom. Your sunroom, yeah, that could be a very good option. It might not be the best for children because it might have a little too many distractions, the puppy running around in the backyard, or the neighbor, or maybe another child that's playing outside. So it might not be the best, but this could be a great place, especially if you're a nature lover and you really get inspired by nature. So I would put the desk or the table into a part of the room that's away from the entry so that you're not constantly seeing the front door, or you're not constantly seeing maybe another member of the family walking by. If it's not climate controlled, you can put a little small heater or a little small fan in there. Sometimes you can get them online for less than $50. You may need window treatments. If you do have, like this particular example of this sunroom, probably might want some window treatments, especially if you have a south facing room that's really hot, or that just has a lot of sun coming in, or if it faces a busy street or a neighbor's yard. The benefit is it does have a lot of natural lighting, although make sure that you have some type of task lighting in case you don't have natural light, and you don't have that closed in feeling. So if you feel like you'd be closed in a closet, go outside on the sun porch. Here's a couple of examples of sun porches or areas that have lots of windows, and a couple of little corners here that we've put in some nice little desk area. So this is one of my favorite areas that people really don't think about that could be utilized. And for the right person, you do, of course, need to take in consideration how many people are going to walk up and down the hallway and such. But if you have a loft or an upstairs or a back hallway, sometimes we have a back two sets of stairs and there's one set that nobody really goes, that's perfect. It's not going to have a lot of distractions of people walking by you. I would make sure that this is away from the main walking area if at all possible. The tips here is face the wall. It's a nice open place. You're not going to have like a lot of closed in feeling behind you. You're away from the possibility of somebody walking up and down the hallway. And it's nice to have that space where you're looking forward. And then if you do have a conference call or something, just be mindful about your backdrop. And it may be that you turn slightly so that you have a prettier backdrop when you are in those calls, and then you can turn back. So you may have a dual purpose or a dual way of using the space. The benefit here, it's a great area. A lot of times we have bookshelves in the space, so it could look like a little personal home office, a library when you're not using it as your office. It's not really a space that people utilize. So it's good to actually stretch the benefit of your home. And here's a couple of examples of that. Make sure that this does flow with the rest of your home. Make sure not to leave a lot of important documents out. So you may want to have a little file cabinet that works with the space that is lockable, just so that you do keep those papers out. You don't want someone to walk through your hallway and happen to see what you're working on, especially if it's a very sensitive document, or like somebody in the home, maybe a child, pick something up and walk away with it, maybe not even meaning to, they just do. Sometimes the garage is a good place. So I've actually utilized this in a couple of homes where there's one person in the home that doesn't really need a home office all the time, but it's great that they have that place that they can go to. Sometimes this is good for children if you have it really clean and it's really well organized. I would not put a small child in this area, because if you put the garage door open, which is always a possibility, then if a small child, they might go out and wander around, and that's never good. But clean out all the tools, move them away from your work corner. Make sure, again, the comfortable chair. Make sure, again, you have a sturdy table. You don't want to bump into it with a lawnmower or something and knock it over. If you don't have, here's the kicker here. Facing the wall is good in this space oftentimes, but depending on the space that you have, you may want to face out the garage door. So here I've got face the wall, because I would not want you to face all of the tools on maybe the opposite side or in a different area of your garage. So as long as you're not looking directly at the saws and the hammers and screwdrivers and all that other clutter, it's okay to face out. I would use lamps to provide some good lighting in this area as well. Again, not ideal for small children. As with the sunroom, if it's not heated, which it's a garage, it's not going to be, and it gets a little cool, you may want a little heater back there, or you may need a little fan. That's fine. Depending on the part of the country that you live in, it might be beautiful a lot of the time. You may need to consider some of these other alternatives for some heat or some cooling. The benefit, it's definitely an area that is not really used that often for this particular this task. It's going to be away from everyone. So you're out in the garage. A lot of people go out in the garage, they set them up as man caves or set them up as extra spaces anyway. Why not make it your workspace? You can raise up the door for a little fresh air. It might be distracting if you have a lot of neighbors driving by looking in at you, but it may be perfect. You may be able to just pull your car out to block that view and still have some space, some light coming through, some fresh air coming through. Here's a couple of examples here of people working in garages. Now, obviously, these two examples, or at least the one example, probably not putting a car in that space as well, but you may be able to. You may know that you take 5 minutes in the morning to prepare it. You pull out the car and you lay down a rug and then move it back before you leave. So other options, of course, is a guest bedroom. There's lots of us that have guest rooms that really aren't utilized. So in that case, it would be perfect. Make sure that you do have a designated area to work if you do have guests and you still need to work. Oftentimes we have guests, we're not working anyway, so it's fine. Make sure that you have plenty of space for whatever task that you're doing. The benefit is, again, this is a space that's not being used often, and it is away from a lot of the distractions. Make sure that you also have somewhere to put your sensitive documents and such. Just like in the center of the house, this is an area that is going to be shared from time to time with other people. So you don't want someone to be able to poke through your sensitive documents, or if nothing else, you just don't need a distraction for a guest that's coming there to visit you, and then they look down and they see your work, and well, that's not very spa-like and relaxing for them. So here's a couple of examples here, and I just love how the one has the bed, but it has the window treatment, so you could even close off the bed and forget that this is a guest bedroom. So let's brainstorm a little bit. Other possibilities. If you have a hall closet, you might convert that into a workspace. It's kind of like an armoire. You have a chair that maybe it sits in one corner. You pull it over to your beautiful workspace. You open up the doors and voila, you've got a beautiful workspace there. Space in a den or basement. That could definitely work. An area that probably doesn't get as much use. A bomb shelter. Okay, so I grew up in a house that was built in the 70s that has a bomb shelter. It is away from everything. It is soundproof. It is a great place. And actually, when I was very young and an aspiring interior designer, I used some scrap things that we had around the house, and I set up my little office there. And I changed it around from time to time, but it could actually function if you did it right as a really good space. An unused workshop. A lot of people have in their garages a workshop or a room off from their garages that they don't really use. Perfect. Use it for your office. Attic space. You may be able to use an attic space if it doesn't get too hot or too cold. This may be something that you want to do some construction and actually have it renovated and make it a really nice workspace and add some value to your home also. You may not want to do that and may still be able to utilize it as a workspace, especially if you have multiple children. You may want to put one of the children there. And I mean, if it's done correctly, it could be really nice. Okay, so a lot of people have that formal dining room or that formal living room, and those have been converted into home offices and done very well. Again, make sure that you put a door on it. There's definitely tips to carry over into that space to make sure it is really nice and functional. So here's a few really cool examples. See that office in the attic there is really cool. It's something you don't really think about very often. And I love we have this little office niche in that little hall closet. How cool is that? And of course, then we have this little workspace it's probably, I think this one was off the side of a kitchen. This is not maybe not ideal for every situation, but if it's around the corner from the kitchen, it's a little closed off a little bit by itself, that could be perfect. So there's lots of great places. I love having the space under the staircase. How great is that? And it's a great use of space that's typically just forgotten about. You have that nice front room that's turned into an office. And then we have the space at the top of the stairs, the landing. Now, this one's set up for multiple people to use. Maybe 3 children could use that space, depending on how well your children work together. If they get distracted, this could possibly be a great place. It could be a place that they go to in shifts. So they have their own space, and we know that, one child's going to go in there and do their work for 2 hours in the morning, and then the next child takes their shift for another 2 hours and has no distractions. Recommendations and recaps. Well, we need to have everyone in their own different space, in their different room, a room that they can go to work, free of distractions. clean and clear from toys, laundry, and other daily distractions. Well lit, adequate space, not huge space, but adequate space, comfortable temperature and climate. I absolutely cannot work if I am way too hot or way too cold. If I'm too cold, I feel like I need a blanket around me, and that's just distracting. If I'm too hot, I'm constantly wanting to get up and get something to drink or walk into a cooler space. Make sure that your temperature is nice. So I would like to offer anyone that has watched this video and that wants a little extra attention, we can do a 40-minute video call. And this is a little bit different than that 30-minute that we do for free. The 30-minute is we get in there, I can answer a question, and there we go. This one is going to be 40 minutes in addition to that, where we can really get in there and talk about and have you carry your phone or your laptop around the house, and we can really talk about brainstorming and how we can utilize some of your home spaces. And I want to offer this to you for only $69. So you're going to get a designer into your home no matter where you live. You're going to get me, and I'm going to come into your home and we're going to brainstorm. We're going to find out what's the best space for you. And then I'm going to give you a few tips. And I can give you a few tips that you'd be surprised you would not even think about, that are not going to be break the bank tips. I can give you, okay, oh, I just passed something, and can we take that piece of art and can we put it in this location? And how about moving that over there? And let's turn the desk that you have to this other location. We're going to make that a really good space for you. So EDesign, again, it's one of the best kept secrets. I can help you. Here I am in the corner here in your computer. Well, I can be in your computer and I can help you to do a lot with your home just through monitoring. I have been working with several clients this way throughout the year, and I've had quite a few clients that have moved out of the area, and I've still helped them with their current home miles away from here. And unfortunately, I'm probably not ever going to be able to do a home visit for them because they may live states away, but this is great. So I can definitely help you with EDesign also. So how does it work? We have six simple steps. We try to, do what we do, a little video call, which actually I'm doing 30 minutes now. So we can talk about it. This is a good option for you. You sign up, because at that point, I know the scope of your work. I can tell you what it's going to cost and all of that good stuff. And then there's the next one's 2 parts. So I'm going to send you an intro email. I'm going to have a programming appointment. And what I call programming is we need to have some measurements. We need to have some information gathering. So we're going to have an intro. I'm going to send you a list, like I need all of these things. You send those back to me, and it's probably stuff that you already have, and it'll make it very simple for you. And then we'll have another appointment on video where I can go through that list of what you have done. And if you had any questions, I can walk you through how to do those. The 4th step is where you just relax. You go on with life, and I go to work for you pulling stuff. And then we have a presentation. That's where I show you all of my findings. It's wonderful. You just sit there and relax and go through a slideshow, and I send you some information, and it's great. And then I do a follow-up. So I give you a little time, depending on the scope of your work and depending on how long it's going to be. We set up a follow-up call, and that's where I can go, oh, no, move that over a little bit, tweak that. Okay, can you raise that picture up a couple of inches? And I really get in there and kind of help you to tweak the what you've already put together. So if you have any questions and answers, this is your time. Put those in the comments box below, and I look forward to speaking with you and seeing you very soon. Thanks so much.